Hello and welcome to episode 174 of Sutton Impact Family Style. Still coming from quarantine. I'm Jason.
I'm Bill. Still, and now back in quarantine, I would say, I guess.
Yeah.
Since this latest surge, we're shutting it down a little bit more. Crazy times, but we are getting back to some sports.
Hopefully.
I'm going to start us off with baseball. And Jason, since you're in the entertainment business, I think a lot of these things are going to apply to your business. But I'm going to one of our writers here in Tampa wrote 60 things to know about the new season.
Okay.
And I decided I want to bring some of these things out.
All right. Sounds good.
So, just some crazy stuff. Like you're allowed to chew gum, but you can't spit it out.
Mm-hmm.
You're not allowed to chew sunflower seeds or tobacco. And you're not allowed to spit. Okay? There's not going to be any ball boys or ball girls.
On the gum issue, I sort of feel like, because I've never been a big fan of gum. I've gone on my rant before. Like, I feel like all it does is it mixes whatever bad breath you have with some sort of spearmint smell, so it's not really fixing the situation. But on top of that, it usually means, and again, these are, snobby things to say, but you chew with your mouth full and you don't talk with food in your mouth. And with gum, you do both of those things. So I feel like if you're chewing gum out, it's this. You might as well not.
Well, baseball players have always done it. So
yeah.
I'm just talking about baseball. I'm not talking about fans. I'm talking about baseball players.
Yeah.
This is on the field. There's always been a big bin of double bubble.
Oh yeah.
Bubble gum in every dugout, and some guys even wrap it around their tobacco.
Yeah.
Which to me is incredibly gross. But there's no bat boy, no bat girl, right?
Right.
Which means that another player is going to have to go out and get the bat and the elbow guard and whatever it is. Now that said, they also say you're not supposed to touch anybody's equipment. So I don't know how that one's going to work out, because one of the other things is, like if you're on second base and the third out is, usually you'd see a player running out with your
glove,
with your soft hat, your glove and everything. That can't happen either.
Oh.
So I don't understand how they're going to do the bat boy thing and then do this. So that's an interesting thing for me. They're going to designate the hitter for both leagues. We talked about this one thing before. When there's an extra inning game, they're going to start with a runner on second base.
Yeah, I like that.
I do too. And then they, but you and I always talk about like baseball and the record books and everything else. So if that runner scores, it's not counted as an earned run on the pitcher. And I don't know how you do that, but I guess they just make these arbitrary things, right?
Yeah, I think, I watched that very pandering Maguire-Sosa documentary that I thought was pretty awful. Did you watch that one?
No.
It was basically just a celebration of Mark Maguire and Sammy Sosa. There was about 30 seconds, where they sort of mentioned steroids, which is sort of the thing. But I sort of feel like once Maguire, Sosa, Bonds, Clemens, all that stuff came out, I sort of feel like a lot of the records and stats, I think that's,
Yeah, I agree.
We're kind of thrown out the window. Like,
yeah, I agree with that. The relief pitcher has to face three batters, which is kind of a speed-up rule. It's not anything else.
Right.
To try it out. I think it takes a little of the strategy away, but on the other hand, it would speed up the game.
Yeah, because sometimes, you've got the big lefty coming in, you want to bring in a lefty to face him, and then you want to go right back to a right. I mean, that's baseball. I mean, that's strategy. I mean, I feel like the people that love baseball love the strategy of baseball. That's part of its appeal.
Yeah. I was talking about players having to dress at the hotel and come to the game in a uniform and then go back to the hotel to shower.
Yeah.
In the hotel rooms, they can only have single-use cups, no coffee mugs or drink glasses. Can't go out to restaurants. They can have room service or a meal in a conference room. Can't socialize with other players. Bag lunches.
Yeah, it's
rain delay. delay before 5 innings, they're going to suspend the game so you don't spend that much time sitting in the dugout waiting for the game. Players aren't all going to be in the dugout. Some players are going to be in the stands.
Right, and I assume some people back in the locker room and they can do some other stuff.
Just spread out, yeah. But mascots are going to be allowed on the field.
Well, they're in costumes and they wear masks, so.
Yeah, and I guess they're going to entertain the people on TV, not the people in the stands, I guess.
I guess. But to...
there's going to be 2 injured lists. One, a normal injured list for 10 days, and a new COVID-related injury list with no minimum or maximum length of play.
That's a smart move.
It's a smart move.
I mean, I guess, you still have, I think the loophole, and I know some NBA players have brought this up as a concern. I mean, they're going to, in their little bubble, is that, you still have the people that are working at said hotels that are coming in and cleaning the rooms, moving in and out.
No, they can't have people coming, no room service.
Oh.
When they get room service, bring food to your room, no maid service.
No maid service? So the baseball players are going to clean back to themselves?
No mints on your pillow. Yep.
Wow.
No rooms, no cleaning service in your hotel room.
Okay, that's interesting.
You're responsible for your own room.
Huh.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
These guys are going to do stuff they've never done before.
Very, very true.
Teams are going to need lots and lots of baseballs. Each day the balls used for batting practice will be picked up by staffers wearing gloves stored for at least 5 days before being used again.
Yeah.
You know the signals they give?
Mm-hmm.
You can no longer touch your face as one of the signals.
Ooh, that's going to be tough for some of those long-term managers.
Yeah. Can't throw the ball around the infield. No lineup cards exchanged at home plate.
Okay.
You fill out your lineup card. You input a lineup into an MLB app, and the umpires print them out 15 minutes before the game.
Yeah.
It's suggested that infielders step away from base runners when time is out. Okay, that makes sense to me. When time's out, yeah, but not because if you had to step away from when they were on base, you could steal like crazy.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Large balls of ketchup and mustard in dugouts are going to be replaced with individual packets, which makes sense.
Makes sense.
No real knives for steaks.
Is that?
I don't understand that one. If you're going to have silverware, you might as well have the knife.
Well, we're living in very political times right now, so maybe you don't want any sharp objects around angry athletes. So.
I guess. But that's just some of the things that baseball's going to do. And, I know basketball will have their own rules, and football have their own rules. Football's rules might be more strenuous than everybody else's rules because there's so much interaction, right?
Yeah. Well, you look when you're rushing the passer and you have 2 guys colliding head on. I mean, tackling anybody obviously is physical contact, but I think, offensive line, defensive line, they're like, butting heads literally. So their faces are in their faces. So I don't know if they're going to have to wear some sort of protective, mask or some sort of new face guard that, would at least cover the mouth a little bit more. I don't know if any of that stuff's been discussed or that's something they're thinking of. We saw that the NBA did their test. And about 5% of the players that are going to participate right now tested positive, which is pretty much the national average. And that's before they've been in it. So it looks like it looks like it's pretty much what you'd expect from everyone is the same for NBA players as far as going in. And we have seen a few players like Avery Bradley, who has this young child that has respiratory issues, is not going to play despite playing on the Lakers, which would give him a really good shot of winning a championship, but he's going to pull out.
Right. And I really respect that. I really respect people that think like that. It's not about the money. It's not about this. It's about long term, not about short term.
And I know there's 2 other players, and I feel bad that I can't remember their names because they both have children that are due to be born somewhere during the isolation block period, and they feel like they don't want to miss the first 2 months of their children's lives potentially, and stay away from their wives as she's going, into labor. So they're going to also.
Yeah, I guess same thing. I totally appreciate that. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, I know I saw Silver basically came out and said, this is the new normal. We have to just embrace it and figure out how to just go with it, which, I think that's what most businesses want to do. We'll just have to see how it works out. And hopefully it does.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to watching the games. I think they're going to be interesting because it's not going to be any noise. And I mean, I want to watch different things like that. No crowd noise. It's just a different thing. It takes you a while to get used to. It's like watching a movie with subtitles.
Yeah.
Then after a couple minutes, you're okay. But it's the first couple minutes when you kind of feel weird.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to the squeaking of the sneakers on the parquet or the court.
Yeah.
They should bring the guy from the Knicks that does the organ and just have him at every game, and do just the normal. I know there's not I assume there'll be some sort of home away designation, but I think the old school organ music with some of the charge defense and have some of that stuff pumped in is not the worst idea either.
No, I mean, it's going to be a lot of games on television. A lot.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they were describing the NBA games as being from, 10 until 10.
It'd be like March Madness.
Yeah, pretty much. And, it's going to be interesting stuff to see how it goes.
And it looks like, based on the schedule, it looks like...
I guess we don't know how this is going to affect players' performance either. Kind of being away from everything and being locked down and everything is going to be different. I mean, it's not like you're only going to have basketball on your mind. You're going to have a lot of things on your mind.
Right. And we also don't know, when the first player on a team gets, at this stage, you say inevitably someone is going to test positive, and how's that going to affect what happens from that point on? I'm sure there's a plan in place, but I mean, that's, it's hard to imagine they can keep the bubble completely bubbled and not one person.
No. I know they're going to test every day, and I guess when somebody tests, they're going to pull that player out and test everybody else and test them again that day. I don't know.
Right, but I mean, if that player's been around his entire team and the other teams, they've been playing every day, and he was asymptomatic for a week, then we don't know how many, it's crazy.
Yeah, but we don't know what the NBA bench is going to look like. People
No.
will be sitting there. People are going to be in stands. I'm sure that's going to be a thing too. They're not going to be next to each other. They're going to limit a lot of things. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, I think they're going to do all in their power, and we already know that all in your power is not going to be enough for every situation.
No.
We already know that.
I do think the schedule that they put out, I think they've done a good job of letting the team. I mean, I know Laker fans are complaining that they have too tough of a schedule, but they're Laker fans, and that's probably what they do. But it looks like, if you were to, like the Grizzlies, it looks like the Grizzlies schedule is in place where if they take care of business, they'll still be in their position. Like, it looks like they did a good job of sort of seeding everybody and giving everybody a schedule that puts them in as close as, you can't reenact the end of a season that never happened. But it seems like they set everybody up for the most part. Like I said, I know Laker fans and Raptor fans feel like they've been given the shaft. And some people say the Pelicans are getting a little bit easy way to try to make up. But the Pelicans are back, I think, 3.5 or 4 games with 8 games to go. So, but I like the idea of a potential Cinderella, like a Dallas or somebody making a large run,
Well, I mean, obviously we think the Lakers have a really good shot of winning this.
Yes.
I think since it's so confined, maybe the Rockets small ball thing turns out to be a difficult thing or a smart thing or a good thing. I don't know. It could be a factor.
Yeah. And we also saw that the NBA is now going to potentially allow players to put messages on their jerseys in place of their names. So you could put a BLM for Black Lives Matter, or you could put something along the, a different hashtag on your jersey. I don't think that's...
Yeah, the NBA players are really the group that is talking about, wanting to do more social justice issues and everything else. So that's good. I'm glad that the league is understanding that, and I know that the sponsors are going to understand that, or at least most of them.
Most of them. And again, I read that story this morning, and I don't think it's officially been approved. And then I don't know. I'm sure there would be negotiation as to, okay, you can write, Black Lives Matter, but maybe you can't write something. I don't know if you can put, an individual name of a victim or something. I don't know what you can actually do as far as that goes. But I mean, it is another step. It's not a policy change, which is what we ultimately need, but it's something to allow it to stay, and the players to feel like they're still in the spotlight while they come back, which is nice. If you were picking today, who is your finals duo? Who's playing in the finals?
Well,
assuming everybody stays healthy.
Assuming everybody stays healthy, I'm probably gonna say the Bucks and the Lakers.
I know it's boring to say that.
Probably common sense, but that's what I think.
And then I think my two wild card teams would be Rockets, Celtics. Two potentially flawed teams, but like you said, two teams with a lot of energy. They play slightly different styles, and then in this weird tournament that the NBA, I mean, I know it's not eventual, but I mean, in these weird circumstances, like, I think they're two teams that are talented enough that they could go through it.
Okay.
And if we've seen Nikolai Jokic, who is one of the better players in the NBA, but also one of the more soft players, he looks like he's been working out like a beast this entire time.
Did they say 70 pounds he lost?
70 pounds. I mean, they showed him, and then they thought Marc Gasol, also another, large man, looks like he lost 70 pounds. Although he said in an interview, he said, a lot of hair, a tan, and the right angle can make you look a lot smaller.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's just
70 pounds, Jokic is going to come in, about 230, 235?
I would say that sounds about right. I don't know what they list him as officially, but I think he was well over 3.
They listed him at like 275 or 280, and they said, but he was probably over 300.
Oh, easy. His size, 7 foot tall, he was easily 310 or something. But a motivated, a guy that's, I think when you watch Jokic play, you can see the incredible skill that dude has. Like his basketball IQ, his touch, his passing. But he was held back by conditioning. A lot like, Joel Embiid on some level, but not, maybe to a more, like a larger extent. But like a guy with that much skill, if he comes in shape, like legitimate basketball shape, that could flip a series pretty easily.
Yeah. So I'm going to pick the Sixers as my disappointment.
Yeah,
I'm going to pick the Sixers as my underachieving team in this last segment of the season.
I think, when's the last time we've talked about a Sixers story that wasn't they should trade Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid isn't, whether it's the Barkley and, and again, he handled those situations well when like Barkley and Kenny Smith and Shaq were like, you've got all this talent, you really need to work hard and, be in shape every night, but he just isn't. And I think that team is just full of distractions, and they might have on paper as much talent as anybody, and you can play an NBA game 2K and beat anybody with them, but there's just something not right with them.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what it is.
No.
So who's your wildest wild card out of the imagination?
This is a somewhat homerish pick, but I think the Pelicans are a kind of scary team. I know they're not even necessarily guaranteed to make it because they are out of 8th place, and now they're just hoping to get in that play-in game. But, Zion, JJ Redick, Brandon Ingram, Ball, like they've got, Favors, they've got a nice, when they're all firing on all cylinders, they're as good as anybody, I think, from a talent perspective.
Sure.
And I think Zion is, one of those guys, like, again, we don't know how anybody, I've listened to the JJ Redick podcast, and he's been in gyms every single day. But he also, took a shot at some players, nobody by name. But he basically said that, even when he was, he lives in Brooklyn. And he said, if you're an NBA player, there's no excuse for you not to find a gym that you could, through your agent and your team, like there's no way you couldn't find a gym you could get into by yourself, is what he was basically saying. Whether your agent makes a deal with a local high school that shut down, and you get access. He's like, everybody should be able to get access to a gym. And he's like, I have every single day. He's like, but I know a lot of players have not been in the gym. So that's another factor that's sort of, hanging over everybody's head. And I sort of agree. Like, I feel like if you're an NBA level player, I know I've heard about a rich guy in LA who lets them use his, he has the Staples Center built in his own backyard. It's a smaller version that NBA players have been able to go to. And like I said, I know Redick. I just feel like with all the high schools and gyms closed, that there's got to be a way an NBA guy, if he really wanted to get on a court, could get on a court and work on his shot and stuff. So.
Yeah, I just think, I think somebody said the other day, if you know one player is going to be in the best shape possible during this whole time, it's going to be LeBron.
Oh, without a doubt.
And so I agree with that. And I think LeBron has such leadership ability that I think that team's going to be hard to bet against. Although the Bucks have so much talent.
They do, but I mean, Anthony Davis is also, you know, at different times one of the best, you know, maybe the best player in the world. And people have seen,
He's
you know,
very talented. He's in a good situation for him.
yes. They did lose Avery Bradley, and it looks like they might replace him with J.R. Smith. So I don't know what that means.
Which is always a wild card.
Which is always a wild card.
But it's somebody LeBron can control.
Yes. Most definitely. I didn't really have any food moments this week. I repeated some other places that I've been to.
Let's see what I have had an amazing time cooking whole fish on the grill. And I've done it twice now in the last week. And I've got some Paul Prudhomme seasoning, and I buy some fresh yellowtail snapper, somewhere between like a pound and a half each. And it's just to die for when you cook a whole fish on the grill. Do it right.
Nice.
So I've been doing that, but I haven't gone out, and I haven't ordered in
Wow.
for a week. So we'll see. I mean, I think I plan to go to order in this week or go pick up. I'm not going to go out. I mean, Florida is just too insane. I mean, there's people here that really don't care about other people, and they're just going to do what they're going to do, and I'm not going to roll the dice.
No. Well, speaking of that, then, I have two entertainment moments for people. On HBO Max, which also has TBS, so if you have some other access to TBS, you can probably get there too. There's the show Search Party. Now, I will say, initially, you're probably going to hate the four characters on Search Party. The premise is there's these four Brooklyn hipsters, and they're fairly annoying. The girl who from Ali Schwarmer, she was from Arrested Development, I think most famously she played Maybe. She has a life that she just, you know, she's sort of in that standard late 20s, you know, her friends all seem to be doing something, she can't quite figure out what to do, she's working, you know, and a friend from college goes missing. And she sets out, and they become the search party trying to find this girl from college who they didn't really ever know very well. And it's a combination sort of dramedy. Each episode's like 25 minutes long. But it's a really fun story. The episodes move fast. And like I said, for characters that aren't really likable, probably especially for somebody, you know, over the age of 30, you know, these sort of hipstery Brooklyn people, they become much more enjoyable on screen. I don't know if likable will ever be quite the word for it, but certainly more enjoyable on screen as it goes on. And then my second one, I've only watched 3 episodes of. It's Padme Lachka, the Indian chef who has the cooking show. She has a new show on Hulu where she's trying to define American food. So the first episode was in El Paso on the border, and they looked at, you know, Mexican culture. Then she was in Milwaukee, and then she did New York, but she did the third episode is a very personal episode about India and coming over and, you know, trying not to lose your culture. And she was talking about, you know, she has a biracial child, he's part Indian, part American, you know, she considers herself American and connecting through food. And it reminds me a lot of Anthony Bourdain, sort of the coming together of sort of people and culture through food, and it's not just about food. You get food, obviously, but it's got that Anthony Bourdain. Here's a person, you know, trying to experience, you know, and define American culture. Because what is American food? You know, it's a combination of all these countries coming together and blending their food. So it's got a nice positive message, and you get to hear people's stories, and then you get to learn about, you know, different foods. And that's on the Hulu.
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't have any entertainment. I've just been plugging along on the Republic of Doyle, just laughing every night seen the Rockford Files and Duke of Hazzard. And I watched an episode last night that had Stuart Margol in it, who played Angel on the Rockford Files, and he was Angel in this show too. So it just draws me in. It's just funny. It always has an interesting story. Nobody ever gets killed. People get shot, never get killed. I mean, it's not a violent show. And the protagonist, Jake, doesn't have a gun. He takes guns off people and disarms them, but he doesn't ever shoot anybody.
Okay.
So it's interesting.
Yeah. Nice. Very nice.
So I'm going to be looking for something. We're in season 5 now of Republic of Doyle. There's 6 seasons, so I'm going to be looking for something probably next week.
Okay. I am excited. I think I want to watch the German show Dark on Netflix. They just released their 3rd and final season. It's gotten rave reviews. They said it's sort of like an adult Stranger Things.
Okay.
So it's got it's a mystery show. It's not subtitled. It's dubbed. And
DARK.
yeah. And sometimes I feel like the dubbing can be more distracting. Like you said, with subtitles, after a few minutes you sort of settle in, you don't really notice. Whereas dubbing, I feel like is kind of hard. I mean, it's hard not to be distracted by it from time to time. But I think I'm just going to roll with it regardless. Yeah. We'll probably have a little more basketball news next week. Maybe some more football. I have my fantasy.
Hopefully, have a little bit more football.
I have my dynasty fantasy draft on tomorrow night, so I can bore people with my fantasy team, as people love to hear.
I know the baseball schedules will be released this week.
Yeah. So
we're getting there.
Yeah, continue to wear your masks. It's not a political thing. It's just a health thing. Just do it. It's not that bad.
Yeah. Mom actually bought me a shield because I'm thinking about flying to go play golf with Tommy next month. So I have a shield to wear over my mask and my stuff to go on the airplane.
Okay.
For a 40-minute flight.
And if anybody has found like what they feel like the perfect mask is in the brand, certainly tweet at us and because I'm always looking for, I've got a bunch of different ones from different companies, but if there's one that's, the most comfortable, I'd certainly be into that. So.
Sure.
So stay safe. Contact us. Let us know what you want to talk about, what you want to hear about.